All right, shalom to the elect of Israel. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rakakwadash. And what I said was all the praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, who is the Heavenly Father, in the name of his Son, Yahweh Shai, who is the Messiah, in the name of the Holy Spirit, which in Hebrew is Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. All right. And this lesson I wanted to go into this Nottoway plantation burning. I tried to do this lesson on my phone, but I guess I didn't have enough space. Okay. So I tried to do it twice and just running into some technical issues on my phone. All right. And Salakia, the screen freezes while I'm trying to do this lesson. All right, or any background noises. If I have to go on mute, just skip ahead to the point where I continue to talk. All right. So bear with me just 1 second. All right. So I'm gonna share my screen here. Okay, this is off Instagram. All right, but here it says news. This came out 4 days ago. And like I said, I tried to do it, back then. All right. But it says largest pre-Civil War plantation house antebellum in America gets destroyed by fire. Okay. And it's just some pictures of it. Okay. And White Castle, it says LA. Slocking, but it's in the south. All right. All right, see. See, and it ain't just burned down a little bit. No, it burned down. Okay, it burned down, man. All right. You know. So, and then you look over here in the comments. It says, well, here the caption says the largest slave era mansion in America has just burned to the ground. Nottoway Plantation, once the pride of Southern wealth and built by the hands of 155 enslaved Africans, was consumed by fire on May 15th, 2025. This was America's biggest standing monument to slavery, with 64 rooms and over 53,000 square feet, maintained as a luxury resort. Right? And I believe, yeah, when you look up this place now, um, I believe, uh, see, yeah, they call it a resort. Okay, you know, but hotel. All right, they made it to a hotel resort type of thing. All right, but it says built in 1859, it was a house designed for opulence but powered by black suffering. Tourists stayed here, weddings were hosted here, but the names of those who built it by force forgotten. Now it's gone, burned to ash. Some call it a tragedy, others see it as a reckoning. Either way, the fire didn't just erase wood and stone, it exposed the uncomfortable silence around how America remembers its sins, was loss or release. Okay, and the thing is, you type it on Google, what is America's original sin? It says America's original sin is often attributed to slavery, see, and the racial inequality it engendered. There you go. It says this phrase, while debated and open to interpretation, signifies a deeply ingrained problem of racial injustice that has shaped the nation's history and continues to affect it to today. Yeah, listen, when you mention America, you can't just forget about, you know, uh, slavery, man. Okay, like that's, basically when you mention someone, you meant when you mention a person, right? Their name brings up basically all the stuff they did, not just a little bit of it, but all of it, basically. The whole nine. All right, and America really doesn't have a good name, especially when it comes to that. But Ecclesiastes 7:1, it says, "A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death and the day of one's birth." Okay, so you know, having a good name is basically. But I basically got this to show that having a name is important. All right, now dealing with America's original sin. Let's get this. Revelation chapter 18, which this chapter goes into the destruction of America. Revelation chapter 18, starting in verse 5. It says, "For her sins, America's sins, have reached unto heaven, and the Most High hath remembered her iniquities." Okay? And so all the things America's done from the time it began all the way up to now, the wickedness, all right, the Lord remembers it, you know? So, and this cuts them devils talking about, white people when they talk about forget about slavery. Well, the Lord didn't forget about it. Okay, we're reading it right here, right? And it said, "For her sins," and America's original sin is slavery. It says, verse 6, "Reward her even as she rewarded you." So people that's really in charge of America, Esau, we're going to reward them as they rewarded us. Okay, and what did they reward us with? What did they give us? Slavery. So what do you think they're going to get? Slavery. It says, "And double unto her, double according to her works, and the cup which she hath filled, filled to her double." Right? And it said that this plantation was born in the antebellum period. Now, antebellum, all right, I typed it on Google. What was antebellum in America? It says antebellum America, a period lasting roughly from the end of the War of 1812 to the start of the Civil War in 1861. The American Civil War, right? It says is defined by the social, political, and economic landscape of the United States before the Civil War. Um, Let me just jump down here. So basically, the antebellum period, all right. They tell you the range, from when it happened, like the end of the War of 1812 to the start of the American Civil War in 1861. Now, you type in on Google, "How were slaves treated during antebellum, during the antebellum era?" It says here, during the antebellum era in the American South, enslaved people were treated as property, lacking basic human rights, and subjected to harsh conditions and brutal punishments. See, they were denied the right to marry, own property, testify in court, or gather without white supervision. Physical punishment, including whippings, mutilation, and even murder, was common. Slave codes, which varied by state, reinforced the system of chattel slavery. Okay, so basically, during this antebellum period, our people was in that hardcore slavery, man. That chattel slavery, which the term chattel slavery um, says an item of property other than real estate. All right, let me just see. That's what the word chattel means. You know, so it says chattel slavery is a system where enslaved people are treated as personal property, similar to an object animal. They can be bought, sold, and owned for life with no right to refuse their forced labor movement. So basically, chattel slavery is when somebody basically owns you and can do what they want with you. You're their slave. They can put you to labor and you have no say so. All right, and that's what we went to. And this is what was going on during that antebellum period of America. Okay, and as it gave you the time frame, right? Let me get it up again. 1812, 1861. So this is within that 350 years. This is the book of Revelation 11, right? Revelation 11. Okay, bear with me 1 second. Salaki, bear me 1 second real quick. All right, so this is Revelation chapter 11, right? And okay, I'm gonna jump down to verse 8. All right, Revelation 11 is starting at verse 8. Okay, it says, "And their dead bodies," talking about us Israelites, spiritually dead. Proverbs 21:16. Without this truth, okay, knowing who we are and everything, we were spiritually dead. All right, it says, "And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt," right, which is America. Okay, says, because America is spiritually called Sodom because you know, uh, it upholds, that HOMO behavior, right? And it says in Egypt, America is that new Egypt, in Deuteronomy 28:68, this hardcore slavery like it was in ancient Egypt. It says where also our Lord was crucified, xed out. They didn't promote that image of him being a so-called black man. They promoted that white image. Verse 9, "The day of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations, the heathen nations, shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half." Right? Now, 3 days and a half, right, really represents 350 years. Let me just see if uh, they'll say it on Google. I'm just curious. Okay, yeah, see? Okay, yes. So that was, someone who knows the Israelite put this up right here. All right. But see, AI overview ain't really they the Lord revealed his secret to his servants the prophets, man. They can't really tell you what it is. All right, but let me just type in what does the 2 months, 3 days and a half mean. All right. Let me just see what they say. Mm, okay. Not really none. But, basically, verse 9, again, it says, "And they are the people and kindreds and tongues and nations, the heathen nations, shall see their dead bodies, the Israelites, 3 days and a half, 350 years." And this 350 years is from the period of 1619 to 1969. Okay. Let me just see something. What year was the bulk of the slave trade? Hold on, let me just slog. Hold on, let me see something real quick. 16, 19. Okay. It says in 1619, significant events occurred in English North America, including the first documented arrival of enslaved Africans to the Jamestown colony in Virginia. Right? This marked the beginning of the institution of slavery and what would become the United States. Additionally, the first representative assembly in the New World, the House of Burgesses, was established in Virginia. So the arrival, we basically first got over here. So from that time, from 1619 all the way to 1969, which 1969 is basically when we started waking up again, when we started waking up to being Hebrew Israelites. All right. When we, which is going to get into, but that whole time period in between is when this devil really had his foot on them, like chattel slavery, all that type of stuff. I believe Jim Crow era was in that too. Let me just see. So like I could be wrong. Kind of somewhat. All right. So basically, these nations, they saw the heathen nations, they saw us in slavery. They saw us in slavery. Okay. They didn't give us rest. They didn't tell us we're the Israelites. Okay. That's what it means when it says, "It shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves." Right. Verse 10. And they that dwell upon the earth, the heathens, shall rejoice over them and make merry, right? So the heathen, it says, and shall send gifts one to another. And we were those gifts that they were sending to each other, man. Slave ships, all that, and it's sent here, there, they even had souvenirs of us, the slaves. They make stuff out of us like chairs. You have a chair with slave hair in it, man. Okay. I don't want to pull it up because YouTube. All right. If you have that, you can look that up. All right. You know, they had postcards with lynching photos on it, all of that. You see? So we were those gifts they were sending to each other. Right? It says, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. Right? And the two prophets is talking about the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom of Israel. All right. Because and they knew the history. All right. So in the time we tormented them, all right, was basically um Shalakia. Hold up. So yeah, because under David and Solomon, you know, we had the nations of slavery. When the heathen nations they knew this, so they took example. They took advantage of us, man, in slavery. This is them getting their payback on us. You see, and this during this antebellum period, all right, this is what happened. This is part of it. Okay, it's part of that antebellum period, man. Our people was experiencing some utter hell during this, man, for real. Okay, and even after slavery, Esau still wanted to Esau was still trying to give us hell. He's still giving us hell to this day. Only until when Yahweh Shah returns is that going to really be put to rest. All right, Revelation 11 and 11 now ceases, and after 3 days and a half, so after that time period, right, the spirit of life from the Most High entered into them, which is talking about this truth. Okay, it's knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. After that time period that we just mentioned, right? So like around that when that year 1969 with 1970, when those years rolled around, which is the end of that 350-year period, okay, the truth started coming. We started waking up. So there's no coincidence that we're the Israelites, man. Okay, there's no coincidence that you got so-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans calling themselves Israelites. This is the book of Saint John, chapter 6, verse 63. It is the spirit that quickeneth; the flesh profiteth nothing. The words that I speak unto you, they are spirit and they are life. See, so the words, all right, you know. So this truth started entering back into us, man. All right, says, they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. All right, you know, and that's what's going on now. You see, Jake waking up. You know, but as you see this, plantation, everything burning, it just reminded me, like, somebody down here said good omens. Yeah, a very good omen because look, man, I've just seen it spiritually. Because think about it, we coming to the end of this devil's rulership, the so-called white man's rulership, right? And when you look at this slave house, as I said, it was the pride of southern, slavery, basically. You know, this thing about it, man. Jake was built in that house, and can you picture Jake walking as slaves, amongst the grass and everything, trying to hurry up, so they don't, get punished. Jake was in. So when I look at this, this house and everything, I'm thinking about, Jake being slaves. I'm looking at the house, representing Esau and rulership and their power. Okay, but now we're coming to the end of his rulership, and now the ones that's once slaves is going to be on top, and the ones that was on the top, aka Esau, all right, you know, he's about to come down, man. All right, and it's going to go out by fire. Okay, and the same ones that had the slaves. Let me say it like this: the same ones that were slaves are going to have the slave masters as slaves now. Okay, We're coming into a new era. And what is that new era? Second Ezra chapter 6, verse 9. For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. You see? So the so-called white man, he's the end of his age. He'd be ruling at the end of the world, then he'd be taken down. And after him, the Israelites will be the next ruling power over the world, okay, over the earth. All right? So-called blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans. You see? And as the scriptures say, Revelation 11, Slack 13, and 9 through 10, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. See? So it's gonna be slavery for this devil. And this chapter really goes into the so-called white man a lot. All right. This chapter really goes into it. Okay. So, you know, slap you. All right. But yeah, this chapter goes into him. So this is really talking about him going into slavery here. You see? And so once again, looking at this picture, just thinking about it, this devil, he's gonna go down, and his last standing kingdom, which is America, is gonna be completely destroyed by fire via nuclear missiles. And after that, the ones that were slaves, the Israelites, we're gonna have them, Esau and the rest of these heathen nations as slaves, man. Okay, that's how it's gonna play out. This is the book of Jeremiah, the 30, verse 16. It says, therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. See, all the heathen nations are going into slavery, and they that spoil thee shall be spoiled, and all that prey upon thee will I get for a prey. Boom. You know? So this was, definitely a sign, an omen. Let me look at that word omen. Omen definition says an event regarded as a portent of good or evil. Yeah, there you go. Okay. This devil is going down, man. He's on his way out. We're gonna have look, man, we're gonna have him as a slave, man. As it says, the elders shall serve the younger. Okay? The elders shall serve the younger. All right. This is how it's gonna go. This is how the story folds, man. This is how the story unfolds, should I say. Okay. But yeah, man, and just getting something real quick. Revelation, because I did. Why do you have about you? I'm shy. All right. Why do you have about you? I'm shy because I almost forgot to bring this precept out. Revelation chapter 9, because once America goes down, we're gonna the elect of Israel is gonna take these nations as slaves. Revelation chapter 9, starting in verse 19. For their power is in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails were like unto serpents and had heads, and with them they do hurt. It's talking about a nuclear missile. Okay, warheads. All right, and then the tail like the serpents talking about the delivery system on the missile. Right? So look, verse 20. And the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither could see nor hear nor walk. Neither repented they of their murders, nor their sorceries, nor their fornication, nor their thefts. All right. So after the nuclear destruction, you're still gonna have people out here roaming around. Okay. You're still gonna have people out here roaming around, man. All right. After the nuclear destruction takes place. You're gonna have people. You're gonna have nations of people out here around the earth. See, it's not gonna be the whole earth gets destroyed and everybody goes away. Nah, man. But the point being, you're gonna still have these heathen nations out here, right? And we were promised slaves. Okay, so when this thing goes down, when the nuclear destruction takes place, all right. After that, you're gonna have nations still around. But look, what about You know, so what are we gonna have to do? What are the elect gonna have to do? They're gonna have to come down and take these nations in slavery. You see, they're gonna have to put them in chains. All right. See, and so the Lord is gonna allow his people to get vengeance on the heathens. Okay. And as I said, this plantation, this house was built in by the hands of black slaves. Well, guess what? In the kingdom of heaven, the nation's gonna build our kingdom, man. Right? They're gonna build up our kingdom of palaces. And we're gonna be big as hell. So they're gonna have to build it to, you know, our stature. Let me look at that word stature real quick. It says a person's natural height. All right. But look, it says height, size, build, all of that. You know. Okay. Let me just type in something. What is a house built according to? Let me see something. House built to. Well, I mean, it makes sense, okay? Because a site there's a house built to a person's body. They saying no, but I mean, it just makes sense. You got to have enough space to walk through rooms. The door got to be at a certain height. I heard the brother Manadazak Banyamin bring that out, basically. The brother that does the videos showing the kingdom and things like that. So we're gonna be changed. We're gonna have new bodies by that time, so they're gonna have some work to do. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 10, and the sons of strangers, the heathens, shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Boom. There you go. Okay. So you know, I wanted to bring that out, man. All right. These devils, man, they going and they falling. Okay. Read about Lazarus and the rich man, you know. It's over with. Let me see. Actually, I'll get that. Let me see. Try. Yeah, I'm gonna get it. Luke chapter 16, starting at verse 19. I'm gonna just read to a certain point, and yeah, I'm gonna just read to verse 25. Break it down real quick. It says, "There was a certain rich man Esau, which was clothed in purple," Job 9:24, "and fine linen and fared sumptuously every day, fat of the earth. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, Israel. I believe Lazarus goes back to Izar Allah. Let me just see. Yeah. Oh, Allah Izar. Okay, which means God has helped. Okay. So going back to it, and the Lord helps the nation of Israel, right? It says which was laid at his gate full of sores. Okay. And the sores is talking about, the curses. Verse 21. And desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. You know. And yeah, the our people, and that goes into what, his children shall seek to please the poor and everything like that. Okay. And also with these, some of our people, they get deals and contracts, for millions of dollars and stuff, like rappers, entertainers, athletes, and that's just crumbs compared to what Esau, aka the rich man, has, man. You know, and just also to show that, adding to the fact that this is that Lazarus is the beggar. You know, what did the curses say? You shall go to the enemy and the one of all things, right? That's a begging position. Right? It says, moreover, the dogs came and licked the sores. And that goes into these heathen nations coming in our communities, bring, for example, Moab and Ammon come bring that cat and dog food, you know, and the cat and dogs are literally the food, all right, um, etc. Okay, and other heathen nations coming and bringing their stuff in our communities. So then it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried, right? And look, what it's about to go into, okay, me and a brother had some questions come to us, man, talking about what was Lazarus and the rich man talking about. when it says hell right here. Oh man. But we're gonna get to that when we get to that verse. It says, so when it says the beggar died, meaning that we're gonna come to the end of being in this low down state. It says it was carried by the angels in Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And Esau is gonna come to the end of being, in this in the position he is now, right? Verse 23. And in hell he lifted up his eyes. And in hell talking about a bad condition because they're gonna be in slavery. That's gonna be a bad low down condition for them. That's gonna be hell for them. Right? It says in hell he lifted up his torments, he lifted up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. Right? Verse 24. And he cried and said, Father Abraham. And that's going to show that it is Esau, because Abraham had Isaac. Isaac had Esau first, and then Isaac, had with Sarah, had what? Esau first, and then Jacob. Okay. So to have mercy on me and send Lazarus that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. So, they're gonna be looking for mercy in the time to come, but they're not. They're not gonna get none when they are in slavery. Verse 25 it says, Abraham said, Son, remember that thou in thy lifetime receivest thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted and thou art tormented. So it's gonna flip. We're gonna be on top and they're gonna be on the bottom, man. All right. And this Nottoway plantation burning is a omen of that, man. Okay. It's over for this devil, man. All right. So I just wanted to bring that out. Lord willing, it was edifying, man, to the elect. I want to give all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Kakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, every well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Shalom to the elect.